Good evening and welcome to the Franchise Tag Podcast with me, your host, Freddie Hall. Welcome back, Adam and Johnny. I just realised it must be quite cold in my flat because every time I'm talking, there's a fog of smoke and mist. I've got my tea as well. So obviously I'm radiating heat and warmth because I'm feeling warm. It's festive. It's Christmassy. We're getting into that period now. And it means that only the football season is heating up as well. There's steam coming out of people's ears. And maybe in one particular case, with one particular player, that is the bad boy, Patrick Mahomes. He's got a different shade about him this week, Johnny. It was a very interesting game between the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs. Of course, we're talking about the Bills win 2017. And of course, that offensive offside call with Kadarius Toney, where there was a trick play from Kelsey to Toney. He run in the touchdown. They'd won the game 27-20. But it was not to be because Kadarius Toney was offside. Or was he not offside, Johnny? It's been a big topic of discussion, a heated debate amongst the pundits and the fans and the players and the coaches, apparently. What's your take on the game in full?
Yeah, I think it was a bit of a classic Bills-Chiefs game, wasn't it? And plenty of storylines that have come off it. Probably, it wasn't necessarily the best game that that we've seen between the two teams from over the years, but certainly one of the more dramatic in terms of talking points. I mean, there's no question that Toney was offside on that play. I think that was clear and obvious. And obviously the reaction from Mahomes, some of the other players, Andy Reid as well. I think it's the mantra that the Chiefs have had a lot of help from the referees this season going against them. There was plenty of calls, as obviously as a Jets fan, plenty of calls that went against the Jets in favour of the Chiefs. When we played back early in the season, so I was quite smug seeing the something go against them. I think in terms of Mahomes' reaction, I think that's one of the other big things has been, the outburst in terms of a lack of sportsmanship, obviously frustration from Mahomes. I actually really like it. It shows that, his emotion, it shows that he cares despite, having won, a handful of rings already, that he's still desperate to get his side back on track. He's obviously frustrated by the way the team's playing, particularly the offense. The offensive weapons really haven't been up to scratch. If Travis Kelce goes down, then that's it, I think, for their season. But I really wouldn't bet against Mahomes just yet. It's been difficult, and they are in danger. And obviously they're not really going. I don't think going to get the 1 seed, are they? So an away playoff game is where it really comes to test for Mahomes. But yeah, I am slightly excited, I think, about the potential for the Chiefs as a reactionary from this game. But yeah, so many talking points, and I'm sure Adam will have a completely different opinion to me.
I mean, like you said, there's loads of talking points. Like, there's so many questions in my head that I want to give you, but I don't really know what order to do them, Adam. I mean, it was a very close matchup. I mean, when you look at the stats, 346 total offensive yards to KC to 327 Buffalo. Not exactly like the highest scoring game of the Chiefs Rams once upon a time, but neither of these two teams are in that position at the minute. They're both teams sort of struggled and had their struggles throughout the weeks. And I mean, does this thing with Mahomes deflect from a game that could have been a high scorer, but it was more of a closer contest than maybe each team wanted? And because this has happened now, the microscope is just completely all under this, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the scoring, the Chiefs have been pretty poor for quite a bit of the season when it comes to the amount of points they've put up. I mean, they're not the sort of, it's a different team to the one that Mahomes, when he first came in, and what he's been with the Chiefs when they've won Super Bowls or got to Super Bowls. And it's just different to what it has been. I think the biggest issue with that is the offensive weapons that he has. I mean, clearly they're just not very good. I mean, that is the problem. He's got Travis Kelce, who has been good all of his career. Rashee Rice has been great, and Isaiah Pacheco has been great. But Pacheco obviously missed the game on Sunday through injury. Rice again showed how good he is. He's I think in time he could be an elite wide receiver in this league. but the others just don't have it. I mean, Green Bay fans, so I know more than enough about MVS, and like it's just it doesn't. He's not quite got it when it comes to the elite of the elite, and that's the problem. Sky Moore hasn't really done a great deal. Justin Watson has dipped in and out. It just kind of feels that he's just missing enough people. He can't do everything himself. And
missing Tyreek a little bit.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, you could argue that, but then they went and won a Super Bowl without him. So, I mean, it's a difficult one. But yes, it is. He could do with that weapon. He's basically got a budget version with MVS, and that's obviously something that it is a difference maker. So, having Tyreek on there would be amazing for him, obviously. But it's just, your team is the sum of all parts. And unfortunately, on that offense, they really need to go hard in the draft on that offense in order to be able to bring themselves back up again, because other teams are starting to take over again.
It's interesting you say that, because when I look at the receiving numbers, both Kelsey and Rice had 10 targets. After that, it was a massive drop off to Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who's a running back, with 4 targets. Kadarius Toney with 4 targets. MVS with 4 targets. I mean, it screams a little bit of predictability, doesn't it, Johnny? And it's tough when you've been so good for so long and the target is on your back. Teams will know how to play against you. It's just, obviously, players like Patrick Mahomes, it's hard to play against talent like that, isn't it, I suppose?
Yeah, I think it does all come down to quality. Obviously, we've mentioned Rice, who, I think has been obviously the standout in that group. But we've seen, MBS has declined. Other rookie receivers really haven't got the ball going. And Travis Kelce was injured at the start of the year and probably isn't still playing at 100%. And that makes a huge difference, because he's a top 5 weapon in this league still at the age of 34. And without him, it's a real concern for the Chiefs. That is my biggest worry is if Kelce picks up an injury, or isn't at 100% flying. When they get to the playoffs, I don't think they're going to miss the playoffs. I still think with Patrick Mahomes, I said it about the Bills a few weeks ago, that with a top 5 quarterback, in this case the best quarterback in the league. Yes, he's having a down year, but it only takes moments and big games for players to step up. The Bills have put themselves in, a position where a few weeks ago they weren't, in a spot to get a playoff berth. Yeah, it seems unlikely now, but yeah, they can go on a bit of a run, and I think the same could happen with the Chiefs. They just need, I think, this sort of game. Obviously it's bad that they've lost, but if they can come out of it with a bit of a reaction and a bit of a get back game, I want to see that frustration from Mahomes come out in his next game. And see him throw for 300 plus yards, a fair few touchdowns. I'm not worried about they've got the Patriots next week. So okay, they're coming off a win, but they're not a team that I think can challenge Kansas City. So, I'm really expecting a big get back game. But they do need to improve in the weaponry if they get to the playoff. Can they? I'm not sure who is available, but could they sneak up, a veteran to come in and help?
Antonio Brown's still out there.
Can you imagine? Jesus.
If he's not trying to be the offensive coordinator for the Steelers, he's definitely available. It sort of very much reminds me of the whole Everton 10-point reduction thing. They have very much reacted after this, their 10-point deduction. And it feels like, this day it's adversity, and Kansas City need to react well to it. I mean, John, you sort of commented about how you feel about Mahomes with this thing. Adam, what about yourself? Because he reacted incredibly angrily on the sideline. He also, when he went and saw Josh Allen in the middle of the end, was very much effing and blinding about the call. Didn't seem very, very congratulatory with each other. We've seen quarterbacks do this in the past, and the brush changes with the painting every time of, is it passion and fire, or is it they're just being a crybaby, they need to get on with it, they get loads of calls all the time?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really that bothered if he wants to start effing and blinding and doing whatever he wants to do. That's fine. It doesn't bother me. I get why people get annoyed by that sort of thing, because obviously it's like the theory is that you get everything that's thrown at you and you just sort of like carry on. But it's like, as Johnny said, he wants to win. You know, I mean, it's like it's one of them things where you can't just sort of expect him to be a robot and completely turn himself off and go, oh well, never mind. You know, it's just not something that they're able to do, because they're just desperate to win. If anything, I just think it shows that he knows that each win is incredibly important for this team in order to be able to get anywhere, that they are struggling and that it's getting more and more important. This is the first time that you've really seen this team under him sort of starting to struggle a little bit on the offense. And so I do wonder if it's starting to come out a little bit in that way. You can't, I don't have a problem with him sort of like getting frustrated. I think you can't go for the refs too much. That's where it becomes an issue. I think that's a little bit going too far. And you start screaming at refs and stuff like. I don't mind him being held back by his players, but when you start sort of like really going in on the refs and stuff like that, and even like in the press conference afterwards, it was you know, he kind of doubled down, and I suppose he kind of felt like he had to. But
what did you think about his comments with Travis Kelce? That sort of play won't be a highlight in what has been a Hall of Fame career for Kelce, and that damages his credentials for his whole career, because that was one of the things he did say in the press conference, and it was one of the things where I went, you're losing me here a little bit, buddy.
I think Travis Kelce's got more than enough highlights in his career to make sure he ends up in the Hall of Fame. I don't think he's going to have an issue with that. When it comes to why he's saying that, he's just venting, isn't he? He's just venting off anything he can think of, and that's just another thing that he can have a go about. But yeah, it's ridiculous. There's no need for that sort of thing. There's only one place that this anger should be placed at, and that's at Kadarius Toney, because the man's a buffoon, clearly. I mean, he can't see. He clearly can't. I mean, it's right down the line. Look the other way. You know, it's ridiculous. And the idea that but he did ask the ref. It's like, yes, he did. If you actually look at the video, he did point to the ref to ask if he was okay. The problem is he then stepped forward afterwards. That was the problem. If he had stayed still, that was fine. You could see what Rashee Rice was doing on the other side. And he's there, he goes to the ref, and off you go. You know, it's like, it's not complicated. And it's like, this isn't the first time that Tony's caused, you know, mistakes and things like that. And that's the problem. It's that's where the anger should be directed, but he can't do it publicly, obviously, because then you've basically destroyed the player. So that's the real problem. But yeah, I think Travis Kelce's going to be fine.
I agree with you in a lot of them aspects, in terms of, and with Johnny as well, in terms of we want to see our players fired up, we want to see our players win, and we want our players to know, you know, how important a win is. And I was never against the way Brady reacted on the sideline, because really that's the only sort of person in the front of my mind where I remember having these sort of outbursts on the sideline, and then Aaron Rodgers on the flip side would do them outbursts, and it was, you know, Tom Brady was the passionate, driven one, and Rodgers was the immature player. And I always thought it was unfair, because I think both teams equally got calls that were maybe favourable to them. And I think the Chiefs have had calls that were favourable to them at times. But I do think there is a way to behave post that. I think the thing with Josh Allen in the middle, I think that's unacceptable.
Yeah.
I think when you are play, this is sports in general. You may not like it, but you are under the spotlight. You are in a position where you are influential to a lot of people in the world, and a lot of young people as well. And there is a way you do have to behave. You are getting paid X amount of money. Yes, you can be human. I want my sportsmen and sportswomen to be human. I want them to be more honest. I hate blanket statements. I hate not answering questions. I like personality. Personalities make sport fun. But you have to also have a sense of decorum. The Eagles in the Super Bowl had a call against them, and it was a massive talking point, a massive discussion. And the Eagles players, to their credit, were incredibly gracious. And because they knew the call was right. They may not have liked it at the time, but they knew the call was right. And the big thing I always said about that is that the games are defined by moments, but at the same time, you need to put yourself in a position to win. And both of these incidences, yes, fans especially may call it, we lost the game because of a blown call. No, you don't lose a game because of one blown call. There is a whole game that you have to play where you have to be at your best and be in a winning position. And if you're leaving it down to the last minute, then there's been more problems in your game plan than just one blown call. This wasn't a blown call. Neither was the Super Bowl. Neither of them calls were blown. They were accurate calls. So I like the human nature of Mahomes being aggressive and being angry and being upset. That's fine. But like Adam said about targeting the ref, you can't do that. You're under the spotlight. That will influence young players in schools and colleges in the US and over here. That happens. I see it with football. When I used to go watch my little brother play, I'm not saying that my generation of football when I grew up were without their faults. Of course they had their faults and we were equally. But when you're then on the outside looking in, you do see how much influence the professional aspect does have to grassroots things. And I think everyone has to think about that. I do believe. And that maybe is a little bit deep for this maybe. But I think it is relevant. I think it is true. Let's still carry on talking about the Chiefs because this puts them in a really interesting position now. They're 8-5. Going into the standings, if they load up for me, that puts them top of the division still with the Denver Broncos behind them 7-6. The LA Chargers have now just lost Justin Herbert for the season at 5-8. The Raiders at 5-8. And when we talk about the conference at the minute, yes, they're going through. However, you have got the Denver Broncos hot on your heels. Do you think it's a moment, Adam, where the Broncos may overtake them? And then if they overtake them and top the division, the Chiefs are then going to come against the Browns, the Steelers, the Colts, the Texans, and the Bengals and the Bills, who are all at 7-6, and the Browns 8-5 at the minute, who could be competing for them playoff spots.
So looking at the fixtures, I think the Broncos have got 4 games that they can win. They are just on a run at the moment where they are just playing really well. Russell Wilson is looking like Russell Wilson of old. Sean Payton has got a really good system going on there. We've always known they've got a great defense. And actually, I think that maybe there was a couple of guys got traded away, wasn't there, earlier in the season, just before the deadline. And everyone was like, oh, they're tanking, because they were like 1-5 at the time. But I don't know if that just sent a bit of a message to the whole of the Broncos locker room and stuff like that. And just it kind of feels like it's really turned around. And yeah, I mean, they've got to play the Lions, the Patriots, the Chargers, and the Raiders. I mean, they are 4 games that are all very winnable. Although the Lions will be tough, I feel like the other 3 definitely are very winnable. When you look at what the Chiefs have got to play, they've also got to play the Chargers, the Raiders, and the Patriots, but they've got to play the Bengals as well. So, I mean, I know that Jake Browning isn't exactly the best quarterback in the world at the moment, but I do feel like the Bengals are playing okay, and potentially the Chiefs are struggling to put up more than 20 points in a game. This is something that you might start seeing that, something like the Patriots, that defense has been so good in the last few weeks, could cause them problems. The Bengals defense is all right, but they have the ability to put up points. I think it'd be very close. I could see it going down to the last week, definitely.
Yeah, out of the 13 games they've played, they've only gone over 20 points 6 times, whether win or lost. It's definitely very interesting. Do you think the Broncos have what it takes to maybe pip this Chiefs team? You said earlier, Johnny, that you wouldn't write this Chiefs team off just yet.
No, I think the Chiefs could probably win out. I think they're playing all these teams to have a backup quarterback technically in at the moment. I think the defense is is still top 5, and if they can guide them to 4 wins, then so be it. I'm not worried about the Chiefs in the regular season. It's just when it comes to the postseason, because we're going to see something that we haven't seen before, where Mahomes goes on the road, has to go somewhere. For example, if he has to go to a place like Miami, it's not as raucous. The home crowd there, obviously, a lot more settled for Miami. It'd be a lot hotter in Miami than it is in Kansas City. We know how lethal the Dolphins have been at home. Yes, okay, a bit of a stinker yesterday against the Titans, who played very well. I think the Dolphins are the one who are going to cause the Chiefs trouble if they meet in the playoffs. As for the Broncos, I can easily see them sneak into the playoffs. I just don't think their start has done enough for them to pit the Chiefs. I could be completely wrong, but I just don't see the Chiefs losing a game now until the end of the season.
Yeah, I am in that mindset as well. I sort of said on Monday, I said that the Bengals would be the only game I think they could lose out of them 3 games. But now Herbert's gone down as well for the Chargers. I think they might. I don't think they will top the division. I think the Broncos may do that, but I don't think they then fall out of the playoffs. But I think what has been a big part of the Kansas City Chiefs' success in the postseason is the home field advantage. It is a tough place to go. It's famously the loudest stadium in the NFL. That is factual. I believe there was a decibel measurement where they broke the record for it. And amongst players and ex-players, Jason Bell has been on this podcast a long time ago and said it was. I've heard many ex-players in interviews say that the Kansas City Chiefs Stadium, Arrowhead, it is a tough place to go. And I don't know whether. I just don't know whether this run, if they're not at home, they play against some strong teams. There are some strong teams in this AFC, and they're not putting points on the board. It could be a real struggle for them. I would maybe say I'd bow out a little bit of them being in the AFC Championship now, just because anything could happen. But it will certainly be very interesting. Now, we'll move on. For the listeners, you won't be able to see us, but you know what I'm going to do. And for the visual listeners, you need to start learning this hand gesture, and don't worry, it's not rude. It is a hand gesture that is famous amongst. It's always sort of, I don't know, stereotypically amongst Italian folk that do that, because there is a certain Italian heritage quarterback in the New York area, Tommy DeVito. Brackets actually on Pro Football Reference, Tommy Cutlets, which I love. Who is leading the way, storming the way with this New York Giants team. He has he's been a starter in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games. He's got 3 wins in the last few weeks. 2 wins on the bounce against the New England Patriots and the Green Bay New England Patriots. New England Patriots and against your Green Bay Packers as well, after beating the Packers 24-22 in Monday Night Football. Is the tide turning in the New York Giant area, Johnny? If we've got a new, the second coming of an Eli Manning that people can really believe in, with Tommy DeVito, the homegrown hero, the Italian Stallion, Tommy Cutlets himself?
Quite possibly. I think, obviously the DeVito mania is completely taken over New York, and it's great to see the just how much positivity he's brought back to a Giants who everyone thought was destined for a top 3 pick in the NFL draft. Is he the long-term solution? I don't think we've seen enough of him so far. I think what has been a big, a noticeable improvement from the Giants is their offensive line of the last few weeks. When DeVito started, he was getting sacked left, right, and center. And now I believe he's got time to make plays. He's getting a lot of support from Saquon Barkley, who had a great day yesterday. But yeah, long may it continue for Tommy DeVito. I think he's obviously won that QB2 battle with Tyrod Taylor, who obviously was injured, but he's come back. Can he go on and push Daniel Jones next year? I don't know. It would be an unbelievable story given that Daniel Jones signed a huge contract this off season. I'm not sure. I don't know where the Giants is obviously still in playoff contention. I don't think they get there, but yeah, they've probably he's obviously done himself justice. I'm not sure he's a QB1, but yeah, I'm sure he'll be in a lot more money in the next few years.
Well, Adam, over to you. I mean, he beat your team. I mean, he does it in style with swag. He's got his dad and his agent there doing the gesture. I know, obviously, you run our socials, Adam, but you don't exactly always have your head buried in the sand in social media because social media, he has exploded everywhere on social media. What do you think about him being? I mean, he's had a great start. New York loves its hometown heroes. They love something in the media to write about outside of losing. And this guy is giving them something to reinvigorate their franchise a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's been quite surprising, hasn't it? With the difference that, after having a few games, he really struggled. But the one thing I would say about last night's game is I feel that it might be more of an indictment on our defensive line than his ability, shall we say. He played against Washington, got sacked 9 times. The Patriots got sacked 6 times. We didn't sack him once, so that probably tells you quite a lot. Yeah, I mean, he's based on the stats and what I've seen, he seems quite a functional quarterback. There's nothing particularly explosive from him, but at the same time, it's like he can be quite consistent. If you give him enough time, in the pocket, then he can get the ball out accurately and stuff like that. So, I mean, yeah, in a way, kind of a little bit Eli Manning like, I suppose.
Don't the New York Giants love that style of quarterback?
It's kind of a bit.
I mean, yeah, Daniel Jones, Eli Manning, Tyrod Taylor, consistent, non-explosive, but actually got. I mean, Eli Manning has now found a personality outside of being in the NFL because he wasn't the most personable in the NFL, but obviously him and Peyton do that fantastic viewing party now. Do you think this is a bit of a flash in the pan, or because they'll be in a position this year to draft a quarterback, surely?
I think it's really difficult, isn't it? They've got Daniel Jones on this massive contract, which they can get out of relatively okay, I think, once you get past 2024. So it's a tough one for them because they're doing that. So it's a case of, do you draft one? I don't think they will. Personally, I don't think they'll draft one. The owner likes Daniel Jones for some reason. I'm not quite sure. But he seems pretty keen on keeping him. And I think being able to have a guy like this as your backup who can come in and do this sort of thing is probably an ideal situation for them for another year. You can almost like play out the Daniel Jones contract to a certain extent and then reload somewhere else. But yeah, I mean, I think I think solid is probably a nice word for him. He looks okay, he looks capable, but I wouldn't say he's going to be the starter all the time. But they love all the Italian Americans, don't they, in New York and all that. So it goes quite well together. So yeah,
I'm all aboard the Italian train, baby. I love it. I keep calling Danny DeVito, which is really bad. Tommy DeVito, Tommy Cutlets. I love it. I've been watching loads of him over social media over the last few weeks, and he's very funny, very personable. Like the whole agent, how he was dressed is obvious. That's so obvious that it's been obviously staged, but it adds to it. Like anything like it. Like what we've gone from like Patrick Mahomes, who's had a bad image week, I suppose, to Tommy DeVito, who's having a very, very positive image time, and everyone's very much invested in it and finds it really fun. And I love that. I think I do think it's a little bit deflecting for the problems that the Giants have. I think people are now more interested about this than than really should be interesting about that franchise is doing really terribly. They're paying a quarterback who's not very good, a lot of money. They've had good players who are underperformed, and there is a lot of problems going into that offseason. But I almost feel like this is sort of their Christmas gift in a way. It's sort of distracting them from the woes that this team has had at the start of the season.
You can probably see that last season as well, to be honest. No one expected them to go on the run that they did to the players. Obviously, it's the underlying qualities behind the scene in the roster was all at the start of this year. But yeah, why not? You're there to win. It's it's a good feel-good story. An undrafted QB has come in. Another player who was quite highly doubted that wasn't going to be good. Turns out this player, he's efficient. Can work the ball well. He protects himself. I'm looking forward to seeing DeVito, get a decent contract somewhere. Maybe that is in New York and just keep living out a dream.
Well, we'll move on to our last subject of the evening, and this is something I haven't briefed you on, but it is, I suppose, an open interpretation. Well, we sort of spoke the other week about how low scoring the NFL has been in the last few weeks, but this week it was sort of a tale of the underdog, really. Like, a lot of the favourites didn't win their games. I mean, the Patriots-Steelers game, people thought Steelers were big favourites in that game, but everyone would have thought Steelers would win that game. They lost to the Patriots 21-18. The Lions beating the Bears. However, the Bears beat the Lions 28-13. That was a bit of a shock. When Colts on a bit of a good run at the minute, losing to the Bengals 34-14. The Browns beating the Jag 31-27 with a backup quarterback. The Jets beating the Texans. That was a big one as well. We had one of the worst games in history of 3-0 Vikings Raiders, which I'm sure was a great 30-second clip of highlights. We had the Cowboys beating the Eagles, which obviously was probably a close contest than it being a big upset, but 33-13. The Titans beat the Dolphins 28-27, and of course the Giants beating the Packers 24-22. Does it just sort of show, Johnny, that how competitive this league is, that there is still results going into the back end of the season that are very much all to play for still? It's still very wide open for a lot of these teams to maybe get into the playoffs, and how competitive it is, and how a season can be changed so much, because we always forget in September the weather's all right and everything like that, and then in some places it's getting colder, more dreary. Teams have bad form to good form. Look at the Broncos starting so badly, now doing well. Dolphins starting so brightly have tailed off a little bit. What's your thinking on this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you just hit the nail on the head. I think the competitiveness of this league, possibly the most physically demanding. We're seeing the some of the best athletes on earth compete. Obviously, they're the best in the world at their positions. It's going to be competitive, and teams that are hitting form aren't necessarily the ones right at the top. I think the Lions have massively regressed, and the Bears took them at the right time. They've had injury issues, which across the league that's having a big impact. But yeah, I think I do think the Lions one has probably got the biggest talking point, because of the differential between the two teams in the NFC North. We've now got a team. The Bears have got a very, very, very slim chance of making the playoffs, and they obviously, have a lot of question marks on what they're going to do in the future, specifically with what looks likely to be the number one overall draft. But the Lions are worried a little bit, because it's been a couple of weeks now where we haven't seen the Lions of the start of the season. Offense just looks a little bit shaky. Jared Goff, I think, he's not in great form at the moment. I don't think they're utilising the weapons, which has been a huge talking point throughout the season. But the defense has looked really shaky. They're really missing that McNeil on the defensive line, who's a huge part of their defense at the start of the season. And the Bears were able to run over them on Sunday. So they're a team I'm a little bit worried about. But I can't remember. I think about 30 teams are still statistically in with a chance of making the playoffs this season, which is, an unbelievable thing to say with 4 games left. So I'm sure there'll be a few more twists and turns. I'm really, the AFC is just an absolute, anyone's sort of pick about who's going to claim those wildcard spots, because, there are about 8 or 9 teams realistically vying for the wildcard spots. So, all here for it. Can't wait for the rest of the season.
I can't imagine you're much of an underdog story guy, Adam. I don't know why. I don't feel like you like. I don't know. You're the sort of guy that wanted
League 2 football team over here. What are you talking about?
You're the sort of guy that wanted Mr. T to beat Rocky and Ivan Drago. That's the sort of guy I can imagine you are.
No. Wouldn't say that. No. Like I said, I support a League 2 English football team. How much more underdog do you want me to get?
You support Arsenal, so
that's not true. But I think it is the only. I'm not sure. Are the Patriots out as well? Because the only team that I can work out are the Carolina Panthers. But
I think the Patriots are out.
Are they technically out as well?
Yeah.
All right.
And the 49ers are now officially in, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're the only team officially in.
Yeah.
Is that everyone else? Still in?
I think everyone else is in. Like you say, it is very competitive, and there's always potential for these teams to sort of work their way up. I mean, the AFC is just ridiculous. It's like it could be any of them, really. I mean, the Bills are currently 11th, and they're 7-6, and it just goes to show how strong it is in the AFC, which isn't really anything that we didn't already know. It's like it is really difficult to pick the right ones. The NFC is certainly not quite as good when you look at the standings. I do agree about the Lions. I think defensively they've struggled a little bit. The only thing I would say is that they have got 4 games left to play and they're all indoors. So Jared Goff, I think, will be fine because of that. And, my Green Bay Packers might just sneak in there and get in there as well. But, it's very competitive. You don't know exactly who's going to get in. I mean, the idea that you can even talk about teams like the Giants and the Bears, who are both 5 and 8, but do still have the potential. We've seen that your Italian Stallion over in New York has managed to get himself 3 wins on the trot. Well, if he carries on doing it, then it won't take a lot to get into the playoffs in the NFC. So, I think it is very competitive, and who knows who's going to end up in there at the moment. It's very difficult. I think, as you say, the 49ers are definitely in, and
the Eagles are definitely in.
The Eagles were definitely in, the Cowboys. But, you look at the AFC, the only two that I would definitely come out and say I think they're dead set to end up in there are the Ravens and the Dolphins. I think once you get past them two, there's so many that it could be. I mean, the Jags are only 1 game ahead of the Colts and the Texans.
And the Texans, yeah.
So, that's really close. And, the Ravens, I think, are ahead enough to make sure that they'll win that division. But you look at the Browns and the Steelers, there's only 1 game between them two. Yeah, it's
three backup quarterbacks though. There's 3 backup quarterbacks in that division. So
They're all playing well.
I think statistically the Cards are out as well because they're on 3-10 and they're over 4 in the division, so they could be out as well.
Right. Okay.
It might be 29 teams. Could well be. Yeah, because it's Panthers 1-12, Cards are 3-10, and then Patriots 3-10 as well. It's one of them where it's not all the teams this year have been all that good in a way. That sounds like a bit silly. Like there's.
Well, is this Tom Brady's argument?
Well, yeah. I don't know. In a way, I suppose there hasn't been a team that I would say we all went they've dominated every week. dominated. Like the Eagles and Cowboys might be 10 wins, and the Ravens might be 10 wins, but I don't ever think that much about them being a dominating team. I can see any team, especially now the Eagles seem to be tailing off a little bit as well. I have this thing where it feels like anyone can beat anyone on their day again. And yet we would have never said that really last year about the Chiefs, the Eagles. I mean, the 49ers are the only team in my brain really, actually, but I would confidently say we'll go to the Super Bowl. I couldn't really confidently say about any of the rest of them. I think the 49ers have proved it and shown it, and they have the depth of squad. They've finally got the depth of squad now. I mean, have you seen the stats since like Chase Young has arrived there? Like it was something like they started the season with 15 sacks and then in 3 games they got 15 sacks. Not because not overly maybe because of him, but because they've now got a bit more depth and a bit more someone commenting, and they found the form. Like it does make it so much. Do you think it makes it more interesting when it's so open, or is it more fun when you're teams that are strong, really strong?
I think you always want it to be open, don't you? Really, that's what you want. It's like the more competition you can have, the more excitement you get. You don't know who's going to win. You know, that's the whole point. I think as viewers, obviously, unless you're a fan of the team, obviously, you want to have really competitive games and see what is see basically who the best ones are. That's kind of the whole point. I think the 49ers, I think you could argue, have dominated pretty much the entire season, apart from a 3-game stretch where they lost Trent Williams. I mean, I think it's, that's the real one, really. I think he has shown how valuable he is to that team. I mean, you could argue Debo as well. He's done incredibly well, but I feel like Trent Williams has done a lot. I'd put something out for the Ravens. I think the Ravens have done pretty well and have dominated pretty well. They're 10-3, which is the same as the 49ers. But I just think they've been very, very solid. Where they've struggled is in division. That's been their kind of weakness, because they've lost 2 games in division. But yeah, I think they're a team that are worth mentioning if you're talking about dominating. But I think you want as many teams that are capable of winning the Super Bowl as possible, because it just increases the excitement for the fans as to who's going to win.
It feels incredibly similar to our college talk last week, doesn't it, Johnny? In that sense of the teams and that sort of gameplay. And
I think so. But yeah, I think that we've sort of said, I think the beauty of it is, particularly in the AFC, it's just so wide open, and the Cowboys have really hit some form, and I'm fully expecting that to be the or hoping that will be the NFC Championship game. They're the only team I think that can stop the Niners. Yeah, I really don't know who's going to be the AFC team for this year. You want to give everyone an opportunity, and this obviously we've had this structure, the playoffs, for a few years, which an extra team gets in, and the bye becomes so important, and I think that's a really good way of doing it. You don't want to expand it any further, I don't think. Because then that's when you will probably see the gulf in quality between teams. I'm trying to think of a playoff game where there was a real showing disparity between teams. Obviously, the NFC Championship game last year, the Eagles ran away with it, but that was because of injuries to the Niners quarterback. But yeah, I can't think of a playoff game off the top of my head. I don't know about you. That was an absolute blowout the last few years now.
I mean, I think what all teams deserve to be in a way, and they keep competitive. I remember scorelines being a bit heavier. Like I remember the Chiefs Jags last year, that scoreline being quite heavy in the end.
Yeah.
But I don't remember watching that game thinking the Chiefs are going to run away with this. But however, I did watch that game in the casino with Andrew. And when I say watch, it was on. I don't know overly if I was that in depth with it, but it does make it more exciting. More teams could get in. The Packers, the Jets, and the Steelers could all be in the playoffs, and that would make 3 very happy podcasters. Doubtful, very doubtful, but we all live in hope. Adam, Johnny, thank you very much once again. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Make sure you check out all our social media and listen to us wherever you are. And we are available on all podcast forms and YouTube. Until then, I hope you enjoy the Christmas period some more. We'll be back very soon and have a